Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Dan Cardellichio. I want to welcome you to another segment of Destination Health Podcast, Finding Function in a Dysfunctional World. I'm very excited. I'm talking fast, not only because I'm New Jersey and I'm Italian. I'm talking fast because I want to get into the questions with December Rose today. This is going to be a great conversation. As you all know, this is a healthcare type of a podcast, and we're going to change it up and we're going to talk about healthcare. It's going to be very interesting. Rosie, how are you today? Thank you for coming on to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we're going to have a
Happy to
great
be
time.
in your presence,
Oh, thank you very much. There you go. So it's from one Italian to the next, right? So it's all good. So just a little background about Rosie. Pop vocalist, songwriter, depicts on authenticity, diversity. Boy, you should hear her sing. I was listening last night. She was doing, wait to the end of the podcast. She has carefully crafted songs, giving listeners, abuse survivors a voice and comfort. We're going to get into that. Artistic. I mean, her voice is incredibly strong, empowering, reflective. She's been she's selling stuff here in the United States and Canada, and she has her own music studio. So this is going to be a great podcast. Now, listen. Everybody knows that I have a big social media presence, and I'm never on social media. You have a company that does that. Let's be real, right? So I was just kind of going through social media one evening. I don't know. It was like, I'm going like this, right? With your thumb, you go like this. And I saw a little Italian flag. It was Rosie. So now I'm listening in because it caught my attention, right? And now I'm listening in. Now she's talking about being Italian. And she's talking about the funny stuff. And I'm like laughing, I'm hysterical. And then I just came upon some of her short little reels that were, but there's trauma that was involved in this. And we're going to, and she was very vulnerable, and she was talking about trauma. She was talking about how she was talking to her grandmother about going to see a therapist. And I'm like, holy geez, man. I'm like, I'm putting myself in. I'm going to be 61, right? And I'm in the United States and she's in Canada. And I'm like, ain't no difference, right? Between the, I can't say Italian-American experience, Italian-American and Italian-Canadian experience, right? So I just sent her a message, and I'm like, usually the social media company does this. And I'm like, Rosie, would you like to come on to the podcast? Right? And she was very gracious and very kind, and she said yes. So let's talk a little bit about the Italian culture and what happened and what brought you to the point where you had to go see a therapist, right? We could probably spend hours on this one alone, but that's okay. This is a starting point because I realized, as you and I were saying beforehand, on how, wow, I realized a couple of things. Even the old man at the age of 61 just realized things that you have brought to the surface, Rosie, just to let you know. So tell me, what's going on?
Sure. Well, I guess like any kid, I'm second generation Italian in Canada. My grandparents immigrated from Italy, around the time of the war. And and so I guess like at that time, as you can imagine with immigrants, they had nothing here, they didn't have family here. And there was a lot of domestic violence. And they couldn't talk about it because they had moved to Canada or to the States, and like this was the American dream. So it was there was a lot of secrecy, and they were just suffering and like raising their families, going to work and getting beaten, and then pretending like they had it all together. And so at least that was the case in my family. So what sucked about that is my mom was exposed to that at a really young age, and that was the start of, I guess, her trauma point. And because we didn't really talk about mental health until I would say 2016, that it was that Olympian that kind of came out that she had depression. I don't remember her name.
Simone.
Yeah, and so it really wasn't until then that we started to have like the Bell Let's Talk and all this kind of conversation around mental health to destigmatize it. So when my mom was suffering, it wasn't really something to talk about. It was like, what is this? And why do I feel sad? Like it wasn't even a thought that, oh, maybe there's a problem. It was just like, I feel sad and I feel miserable and I feel all these things. It was just, this is what it is. So unfortunately that kind of spilled out into our home life, myself, my sister, and my dad. And so we all got different angles of that, and
Mhm.
you know, the emotional, the mental, the physical abuse portion of that. But again, we haven't been having these conversations, so we don't know what's going on. We just know that we're not happy. We know that we're crying. We don't recognize who our mom
Right.
is. At like one point, she's this really sweet and kind and super intelligent woman, and the next thing she's like turned into this, you know,
Monster. She just
pretty
turned
much,
into a monster. Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
much.
And
And you know, like then as I got older and going to high school, going to college, and then these topics started to come to surface, and it was like, hey,
right.
you know, mom, like maybe there's, you know, something we need to do about this. So my dad encouraged her to go see a therapist, but again, like part of this like Italian culture thing, seeing a therapist, oh my god, you're crazy. Like that means that you're crazy.
Yeah,
And
that's a big stigmata that goes on in an Italian household, whether it's Canada or the United States or whatever you look at, right?
yeah, and you know, I would love to say that it's improved, but amongst the community, a lot of it hasn't. Like it's still, you know, amongst the immigrants, it's still a thing. Like, don't talk about a therapist. So, so my mom I actually did start seeing one at some point, in secrecy, and I think that she found some benefit to it, but couldn't wrap her mind around how to like really use the how to really apply forgiveness. And so that
Hmm.
was kind of like the common denominator in the therapy sessions is like, well, you know, you've experienced a lot of crap. Like how you need to forgive this so that you can move on and be there for your family. And I think that that concept just like was unfathomable to her. And it was like, absolutely not.
Hmm.
You know, like I hate what was done to me. I'm angry of what was done to me, and I hate the people that did it to me because
Hmm.
I was helpless and so on and so forth. So I will not forgive them. And I think that that decision is what kept her um,
Angry.
extremely angry and
Yeah,
embittered at the world. And she lost complete sight of her family, herself, and
yeah.
her future. So in the end, we kind of like um, had to pack up and leave
Hmm.
in like a span of 3 hours, and life as she knew it was over. Like it was painful for us to do that, but my dad at some point came home one day and he's like, Rose, like I'm, you know, I feel like I'm having chest pains again. And he had previously had a heart attack and quadruple bypass surgery. And he's like, look, he's like, I'm starting to get chest pains again. He's like, this stress is just too much. He's like, I can't help her. I've been trying and she doesn't want to listen. He's like, you know, I'm gonna have to leave. He's like, you know, you're welcome to come with me. He's like, or you stay with your mom. What, you know, you choose. And at that point, I was like,
How old were you, Rosie?
so I was 25 already at this point, which
Okay,
someone would say like, oh, why didn't you just like pack your things and move out earlier? And well, I'll get into that
we'll get into that.
later.
Yeah, I get that, Rose.
um,
I
but
get that,
yes,
Ro.
yeah, it's like, oh God, that's like another thing to unpack. Um, but yeah, so at this point, like I'd been suffering in there so long, and I had developed all kinds of inexplicable health conditions that I was like, well, to hell with this. Like I'm out of here, Dad. Like I'm coming with you. And so we knew at some like one evening that she was going to be out for whatever it was that she had to do, and we had 3 hours, and we knew, get in there, pack your things, and get out to avoid confrontations that we don't have to involve the police or, you know, have any like, yeah, physical altercations, right?
Hmm.
um so that's what we did. And my dad, you know, left a note on the door just saying that it was basically over and that we had left, but that we were safe. And it was, you know, it's a very painful memory to imagine like someone coming home to a note on the door and that life as you know it is done. Um,
Especially your mom, because in an Italian
yeah,
household, the mom is the centerpiece,
yeah,
right? Mom is the centerpiece because mom runs the show in the house.
yep,
It's not the dad, it's the mom because she's cooking,
yep.
right? She's just, she's happiest when she's cooking and the people, everybody's eating and they're putting her up on the pedestal because the homemade manigot is just out of control and it's melting in your mouth. Mom, did you make 50 of them just for me alone?
Yeah, right.
Now,
Right.
yeah. So I'm just coming up with so many different thoughts and so many different questions. I mean, my first comment is I lost my mom in June, and I had put her over to a friend of mine who is a psychiatrist and that deals with cancer. And so, because it wasn't the cancer that got her; it was her that got her. My sisters and I were talking about this the other night, Ro, and She just wanted to get off the phone. She didn't even want to speak to this person. And here she is dying, not because she had cancer or even the chemo, because it was
Yeah.
her approach and what she was doing. And it was that, to me, in my mind, I say depression, if you will. Do you find that your mom was depressed because of what she went through? She just wasn't, she's just depressed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the sessions that she did have with a psychologist and in psychiatric evaluations, like frequently was that she was experiencing depression.
Mhm.
Now, obviously, we weren't privy to the full diagnosis or like what really went on in those sessions, but that was the general conclusion. Now, I think it ravaged her in a lot of ways because it was so long and it became chronic. And if I'm not mistaken, like once it's chronic, they call it mania or it turns into
Mhm.
mania. And
Mhm.
I think that's like that was evident because you would see these transformations on a weekly basis that like she would have a good day that you felt like, oh wow, I got my mom back today. And
Yeah.
then the rest of the week would go to hell and then you're like, where did she go?
Yeah. What happened? And you don't even know what that trigger was
Yeah.
that even brought her down, because you're just being nice. You're just going through your day. Now, here always comes the tough questions. What happened to you? What was that emotional trauma? Let's start there first, because growing up in an Italian household, for those who haven't, when you're first generation, you were born there, it's a tough household, right?
Sure.
It's a very tough household. The men were tough. It was just tough. I mean, they came over, they were laborers, they used their body. They didn't use their mind just yet, right? They
Right.
just didn't, they weren't doing that at that point. There were some, but the overwhelming. So what was that emotional abuse? And where did that come from?
So, I if you had asked me this like even 6 months ago, I probably couldn't have like labeled it, but I've spent a lot of this year talking to therapists and like really like unpacking it. And I think to summarize it, the trauma bit was that because she was emotionally unavailable,
Hmm.
and therefore myself and my sister were like emotionally neglected,
Hmm.
um, I felt rejection. And I
Hmm.
think that rejection and feeling like I could never get her attention made me feel inadequate. Like I didn't
Hmm.
deserve her love or I had to prove something, I had to win it. So I became extremely competitive. And so I guess I already had a bit of that naturally that I wanted to be great at everything I did. But then it kind of like got to a really unhealthy point. So everything
Right.
in school was I have to outdo my classmates. I have to be the best singer. I have to be the best in my math class. And and so this constant like feeling like I needed to prove something always left me disappointed because it didn't matter how well I did in anything. Even her just saying like, oh good, good, like I'm happy, happy you did well in class or whatever. I knew it was still felt superficial. It's like it was still empty because she was still so preoccupied with what she was, depressed about and
Right.
so on and so forth. So I kind of like stepped into the role of mom for my sister, like at the age of 5, basically.
At the age of 5, you were just older than your years, and you had to be. You were forced to be, right?
Yeah, and my dad was a workaholic and like kind of the one holding up the fort while my mom
Well, he
was
had he
suffering.
had
And
he had he had to make the money. He had to make sure everything, that you had the roof and you had food and
exactly.
and all of that. And that's usually what happens here, is that one parent just goes crazy and works because
Yeah,
you had to everybody's overcompensating, right? Everybody's
yeah,
compensating for the weakest wheel, that spoke on the wheel, that
yeah.
weakest. So dad's working, you're taking care of your sister, and you're like, geez, I just want to watch Barney right now.
Pretty much.
Yeah,
Pretty
yeah,
much.
yeah,
So it was
yeah.
I guess like it started there really that's like where the beginning of the psychological spiral started for me, that it was this constant like I need to prove something. I need to be great. Why doesn't she love me? Why doesn't this? Why doesn't that? Oh, it must be my fault. Or she's always sad. Maybe she's not happy with me. So it became I took everything very personal.
Hmm.
And then that was like also the beginning of my self-sabotage because I started harboring, obviously I was sad. And no, now in hindsight, and because of my exploration of naturopathy, I was harboring so much sadness that since childhood I always developed lung infections or
Hmm.
respiratory infections. I had like like pneumonias 5 6 times,
Hmm.
bronchitis, sinusitis, and it just continued until I started to unpack it as
Yeah.
an adult.
So you
And
just turned around and you said, the buck stops here, right? I'm not going to let this stop me in my life. And, we all do that. We all have a tendency at one point in time to do that. Where did your mom's condition, depression, whatever you want to label it, where did it come from?
Um, so I want to say that my grandfather already had like some of it.
Hmm.
But to be honest, I don't know him very well because he lived in Florida, and I've maybe seen him a handful of times my whole life, and now he's
Hmm.
passed away. He's passed on. My grandmother, because she was the one that was getting beat to a pulp, I feel like,
So your grandfather was hitting your
yeah,
grandmother. Okay.
yeah, and I think, again, I don't know this for sure, but I think that this was just part of his mental unwellness too. I
Right.
think he was already someone that was kind of angry and on edge, but then, getting into an argument with her, it was like instinctual, like, okay, I need to fight. And fight
Hmm.
equals physical, aggression. So, I don't want to give him, I don't want to make him sound like a monster because I don't know him very well and now he's dead. So I'd rather not, I'd rather let him rest in peace.
Hmm.
you know, but so I think my grandmother had her own fair share of
Stuff.
mental things that she still to this day refuses to talk about.
Hmm.
Um, but I think between the two of them, they made a cocktail that
Right.
lands up in my mom, and she's got to fight those demons, which at this
Right.
point in time she's not doing. So
Right. And listen, we're going and for all of my Italian friends, all of our Italian friends, Italian American, Italian Canadian, we do not hate the Italian culture, by the way. We don't
Mhm,
hate
mhm.
Italian people. No, no, no. I couldn't. I just couldn't be anything else, to be honest with you, bro.
Yeah, I
Right?
understand
But there's good and bad in everything, and we're just
everything.
talking about some personal experiences that have manifested into physical. Now, during the emotional abuse, what did you do to get over it when you were younger, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old? I mean, did you develop games in your mind so that you can get over this?
I think I lived like a lot with my head in the clouds. I was like a full-time daydreamer. But also I guess I just developed, a lot of my coping skills were to overwork myself, to be more competitive and to like study harder and work harder and read more.
You were the
Um,
hero in the family.
well, I wouldn't have called myself that, but sure.
So if you look at somebody that goes through something, and it actually came out of the college that I went to, Rutgers University. There was this woman, Janet Geringer Whiteheitz, and she did the seminal and the original work on adult children of alcoholics, because that's going to be my next question. And every individual in the family
Mhm.
has a role. You're the hero. There's a couple of dirty little secrets that are going on at this point in time, but yet you bring pride to the family by doing well in school, and becoming whatever it was, because, oh,
Right.
little Rosie's so good in school, she's got
Yeah.
straight A's. She's going to be a doctor, she's going to be a lawyer, she's going to marry a nice Italian boy, she's going to have a lot of she's going to have a nice she's going to have a lot of nice babies, right? Right? They're going to name them all of these great, wonderful names that. And I love your videos. There's a cadence to Italian names, into the Italian language, which there is. I don't have that anymore. So if you were to speak to me, I give it to you straight. You're going to hear the Northern New Jersey accent with the Italian, right? So you were kind of the hero of the family, taking care of things at a very young age, bringing pride and joy to the family. Did your mother drink?
No, she did not.
No, no.
Mm-mm.
But I guess we can sit there and,
Thankfully.
yeah, I guess we could sit there and say, hey, listen, even though she didn't drink, I guess you can say, hey, when you have this type of trauma, no matter what it is, there's same and similar stuff
Mhm.
that goes on. So there was some physical abuse. Talk about that for a few.
Well, I think, like the expression says, monkey see, monkey do.
Yeah.
I think that, she grew up seeing that, and, I'm sure she got her own fair share of that beating at home because, again, my grandfather. And I think that was just her way of disciplining, and or at least that's what she called it. This
Right.
this is to discipline. Like that was bad. Like no, you can't do that again. But thing is that like I think that once you start, you can't stop. Once you've kind of tapped into giving yourself permission to express that anger in an unhealthy way like that,
Hmm.
you don't know how to do it any other way. You
Right.
feel like that's the only way you're gonna have control. And so I thought it was normal because like obviously like you don't really walk into fights at your friend's house. You don't see like their parents beating their kids. So you're like, okay, well, your parents don't hit you? Yeah, mine hit me. Like, what's the big problem, right? But as you get older and you realize like, wait, that's the only way they know how to express their anger. Let's let's take a step back here. And that's when I was able to, I guess, like disarm her because I don't react. I'm not gonna react to the physical aggression anymore. I'm not gonna fight you back. Go hit me. I dare you, hit me. And then if I just stand there, then you're gonna get more angry because now I've not engaged. I've taken away your power. So when I started to realize that I actually had some power by just not engaging.
Yeah, you had a lot of power, but you didn't realize it because if you don't engage and you just walk out of the house or you just walk away, that leaves them with a lot of anger and that leaves them with a lot of emptiness
Exactly.
on what's to be done. You're out. You know, you just left the house. I'm going to go to my friend's house or
Right. So
something
I had
along.
kind of like checked out, both mentally and like just there with my presence. I had completely checked out. And so at that point I realized, okay, well, if I have this much power to at least like trigger her even more and realize that she can't continue this way,
Yeah.
it's gonna show her, this isn't correct. And at least that was what I was hoping for. In the end, it wasn't very successful. Just that I think that's when I was able to get enough strength to be like, at that time with my dad, it's time to go, or I'm gonna follow you because I can't be here anymore and feel like I'm literally a squished insect.
Yeah.
Uh,
How old were you when all of this, when you became aware of it? How old were you?
um, 1920.
1920. But beforehand, you were just going along with the program because this is what was going on in the house.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was like deeply unhappy, but I was just like you said, going along with the program. Like this is normal.
Yeah.
This is, and I was gaining awareness like from my friends at school that something was maybe I had things a little bit harder than they did,
Right,
but
right, right,
not. I don't think I didn't understand like how much harder. I figured like okay, every family's got their stuff, not realizing this was like completely abnormal and like should not be happening. And then
right.
basically at 18, 19, actually 19, I went to the clinic for I was having like digestive issues, and then finally the doctor says, oh, like that's IBS. I'm gonna refer you to a psychologist. And that was at 19, and that was the beginning of when I started to like really gain awareness on, oh shoot, this is a nightmare. Like cannot be happening. And she helped me a lot. This therapist helped me a lot. That was kind of the turning point for me of the awareness, the strength development, and so on and so forth.
So it sounds like you were crashing and burning,
Hmm.
right? And we'll get into the physical manifestations of all of this in a few.
Sure.
Did you burn out before those physical manifestations? It was like, I don't have the energy to study for my chemistry exam or my history exam, my language exam. I don't care about social studies. Did your grades fail? Did you start failing before the burnout?
I never, thank God, never failed in school, but I came close to it in my last year of high school. When I was applying for college, basically, I got severely sick, and I just had like this constant fever for like a couple weeks, and um not body numbing. I couldn't get out of bed, and I guess it was
Mhm.
like a partial paralysis type of thing. But I had gone to the hospital, and they didn't find anything wrong with me. But my that was my burnout.
That was your that was your breaking point.
I
You
was
you
like a
were
vegetable, just like
you were
kind of thing.
depressed. Yeah,
Yeah.
you were depressed at that point, right?
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
Now,
Yeah.
did you turn to alcohol or anything else during this time?
No, but I felt the tendency. Like it was the kind of thing that I just associated like self-sabotaging behavior with
Mhm.
alcohol. Like I'm sad, and like I know that if I do something bad to myself, it's gonna piss off my parents.
Yeah.
So I was, intrigued by smoking, not because I liked it, but because I knew it would piss them off. Or same with the alcohol, like I
So
would
you were smoking cigarettes. That was your
yeah, yeah,
rebellious thing.
yeah, and I didn't like it was the dumbest thing. I would like walk into a corner store or whatever I don't know if that's what you call it. We call it a daypenner. I would walk into a daypenner and ask for like cigarettes, and they're like, okay, great, what brand? And here in Montreal, they have to be closed off with like this black screen like a cabinet door so that you can't see what brands are behind there. So I didn't know what I was asking for, and I was like, oh, it's like just give me anything. And the guy just like could tell that I wasn't a smoker.
You're not a smoker, and this is the first time, and he's like, listen, little girl, come here.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this a little
Yeah,
bit.
exactly.
Right?
So I just like, oh, whatever you got. And then he's like, well, he's like, I have like, you know, the $20 ones, or I have like the $10 one. Give me the $10 ones.
Give me a couple of $10 ones. I got a 20, but you know, here it is, you know. I mean,
Right.
let's
So
go from there.
exactly. So I was doing that, and then on breaks I would just go and like smoke a cigarette and cough my lungs out and not even finish it. But it was just like, I did something bad today.
Yeah,
But
you know, I'm gonna show them
right,
what this means. I'm gonna show them that,
exactly,
you know, how tough I am. Look at Ma, you know, now
exactly,
try to stop me.
exactly.
If that was the only thing you did.
Yeah,
Now, let me ask you a question. How did this play out with boyfriends? How did
it
it play out
didn't.
with
It didn't play out because I didn't. Well, firstly, I didn't date until I was like maybe. Well, okay. Ooh, okay. I guess the first person
Listen,
I
in an Italian household, the girls don't date until they're 50.
yeah, yeah. So, okay. Yes, that so the first like boy I was interested in, I was 16, and like that didn't blow over very well because I was going to school with him, and so whatever, my dad hated him. My mom only tolerated it because she knew his mom, and it was like, oh, just is just, you know, this is not gonna last, so let her just realize it on her own. Anyway, it turned out to be one of the worst relationships of my life, and and it mirrored a lot of the home dynamic, which
Right.
obviously we don't know this until we're adults. Um, in any case,
And this poor guy is traumatized because he probably fell in love with you, wanted to marry you, and then all of
actually,
a sudden you're like, get out of here, buddy.
actually, that would have been a best case scenario. It was horrendous. That's like also a tale for another podcast, but um, it didn't end very well. So I didn't. I actually, in the time that I was home, I dated a lot of in secrecy, and didn't tell her about it, and always made excuses. Like, you know, the guy would be aware that there was a situation, but it would always be very like light dating. We couldn't, not really a relationship, just kind of like, oh,
Right,
I
you're
think
not
he's
going
nice.
home. You're not going
No,
home and
no,
watching
like
TV. It's a
no,
Saturday night. You both got out of work, right? You're in college. You just don't want to do anything that night. Why don't you
yeah,
come
like
over and we'll watch a movie or something like that, right?
pretty much
No.
like it was, yeah. So like there was a lot of secrecy, or I had to like lie about where I was going. My dad know, my dad would knew, and he was always very, you know, encouraging of like, look, you know, I know that you got a date at some point, so just be careful. You call me, you're going to rehearsal. So like that was kind of my cover story. I'm going to rehearsal, ma. Like dad's gonna drop me off, and he did. He would usually like drop me off at these dates and like then pick me back up. So he'd be like, "Okay, you got 3 hours." He's like, "Go have your dinner, go watch your movie. I'm coming to pick you up here." And so we would like it. It sounds terrible to say out loud, but it was really tough. Dating was really really hard, and I
Right.
at some point I just like almost opted not to at all because I couldn't make the right choices. I couldn't see relationships objectively to even figure out how to form healthy relationships,
Right,
and
right,
they're
right.
all carbon copies of each other. It was like the
Right. It
same
was just
guy in
one
different body.
disaster after another and so forth.
Exactly.
And, you know, you're what you're bringing to the table is not healthy. And if that person had some issues, which we all do, I mean, it just didn't work out at that point in time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Are you okay now dating? Is it better? Did you
Oh, much better. Yeah. So I there was a phase of about like 6 years that I didn't date because one of the last dates that I went on, I was sexually assaulted, and that put a sour taste in my mouth with like, oh, I'm really getting worse here. My choices are getting even worse.
your choices of men are
And the red
not,
flags, I couldn't see them. Like
you don't see them.
I couldn't see anything. It was just like, oh, again, familiar. This
Well,
is
yeah, it's familiar. It's like, oh, you're messed up. oh, I'm messed up too, right?
Right.
And let's go out
Exactly.
on a date. I don't know how messed up you are. I don't think I want to find out
Right.
how messed up you are. So listen, if we knew you back then,
It was
we would have
it
called
was
up that young man and we would have said, listen, buddy, we gotta talk about this,
right.
but yeah, anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, but no, so now I'm fine. I've now that I've left home and been able to really work on myself. No, I've met a very great guy now. And I'm
Awesome. I'm
very
happy.
happy. And he's been really amazing in helping me put the pieces of myself back together because I think I just had lost a lot of objectivity and perception of like what I actually brought to the table, and fortunately he was able to see that and be like, hey, I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit. And just he's really been really patient. So I'm very grateful.
So let me ask you a question now. You had this burnout, right? You're just going through this tough time. You're just, dating is falling apart, man. You're like, I just got to get out here. Now the physical
Hmm.
symptoms came in. It was the IBS,
Hmm.
right? What else? What else did you
The
experience?
recurring respiratory infections. I had a frequent like voice loss. Um,
Well, that's not good for a singer.
oh no, it was awful. Yeah. Because they would happen a couple times a year, and every time it happens, any singer can kind of like attest to this. It like usually takes about 2 months before you're back to your
Mhm.
usual. You can sing before that, but it's not very clean. You can hear that there's something wrong. So if every time you get it, it's a 2 month recovery, you can do the math that if you get it a couple times a year, you're pretty much screwed.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
what else happened? Respiratory infections, IBS, voice loss. What else? What else
Hormone
happened?
imbalances, irregular menses, chronic bloating, food intolerances, seasonal allergies that developed over time, body-wide acne, um, even some hair loss at some point. It was like I was in,
Stress. The whole thing just came
yeah.
out. The whole thing just came tumbling down. The dogs are barking in the background. That's okay. It just all came tumbling down. What did you do to get yourself out of this? Because I know that you went to become a doctor. You're in naturopathic school. You're like, oh my God, I'm going to figure this out. We're gonna
Yeah.
help people. I got this. How did you get yourself out of this?
The first therapist that I was going to see there at 19, she after, a good year of sessions, she recommended me to a homeopath.
Mhm.
And after that homeopath said, like, look, she's like, I think I could help you with this thing, but I can't help you with this rest. She's like, I would recommend you to somebody else. And so by the way of referrals and research to find different alternative medicine practitioners, I tried homeopathy, naturopathy, sujok, some acupuncture,
Mhm.
and NATE, Nambudripad's allergy elimination technique. And so by way of all of these practitioners operating on different parts of my ailments, um, I became very aware of like, oh, like all this kind of stems down to asking the right questions, but just general awareness of what's happening to me
Mhm.
and why and how to ask those questions. So finally, when I went to study to be a naturopath, that basically trained me to ask the right questions because at that point I felt like the Western medicine world had completely failed me.
Mhm.
Um, they didn't take me seriously. My tests were always normal, but like they couldn't explain why I had, it was to the point that when I would go to the gym, if I would be doing cardio and burn more than 125 calories, which is nothing, I would trigger my period.
Yeah.
It was like, oh my God, like I can't even
Yeah.
exercise because I'm
Biochemically, you were just done at that point in time.
yeah, so it was
Yeah.
very frightening. The anemia was getting worse because
Yeah.
at some point my menses didn't stop for 6 months, and the doctors were like, "Well, look at your blood results. You're fine. I
Yeah.
think you need to go home and rest and like just manage your stress levels." And it's like, how do you do that? How do you manage your stress levels and
Don't you
actually
love that? Go home, manage your stress levels. How?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like pick up
It's
some
like I have
yoga,
high
man.
cholesterol. Okay, go home and eat well.
Yeah.
How? Am
Yeah.
I am I eating macaroni out of a box? Am I
Right.
eating sauce out of a jar? Is that good? No, it's a lot of processed stuff that you're eating there. I have a rant with that, and I'm not going to go on because it'll take me an hour. Rosie, you'll be sitting there looking at me like, what the hell is he talking about at this point in time? All right, this is all about me today, not about you, buddy.
No, it's all right.
um, so what steps did you take? You had all of this stuff, you went to see all of these doctors. What were the couple of key ingredients that you did? Was it a diet? Was it nutrition? It was a combination of nutrition, therapy. What was it that got you over the hump?
I think all those alternative medicine practitioners working together to tackle different aspects. So for instance, like the one I had, I guess the most significant results from was the Nambudri Pads allergy elimination technique, because my brain was in such a state of chaos of like anxiety
Right,
and
right.
and whatnot that I couldn't even I couldn't have any calm. So once they started to help with removing some of the allergies,
You're
and
just the adrenaline just going all the time.
all
There
the
is no
time.
calm. Right.
So once they started to address a lot of those allergies and to treat them, then my body started to just relax, because it was like, okay, we took out one Jenga block, we can make the rest tumble, and that brought me to a point of enough calm that I could think and process what had happened. At that point, I moved out, and I think that for once I moved out was when I really started to like transform, and I started to recover my health, and I saw a somatic hypnotherapist, and I could never thank this guy enough or give him enough credit, because like he was just so blunt with me about like I went into his office and he goes, okay, so why are you here? I'm like, well, I have all these infections and I'm depressed and I'm anxious and I can't. And he's like, he shut me up in like 30 seconds. And he's like,
why are you here?
Are you here to complain? Get out of my office. And I was like, I just started crying. I was so embarrassed. He's like, are you here for more problems or are you here for a solution? And I was like, for a solution. And finally,
I think, is that the right answer? Please don't yell at me.
yeah. So we broke the ice over those tears, and then finally, I think I sat in his office for 3 hours, and I just like emptied a box of tissues. I just cried during the whole therapy session. And I swear, I left there. I had gone in with bronchitis, and I left without it. I like cried out all the tears that could have possibly been triggering any kind of somatic, symptoms in the lungs or in the respiratory system, and it was just over. And so that drastically improved my health, because I was able to like relieve that grief, and to relieve a lot of the ways that it had stacked up upon me with dating experiences and relationships with people, and how all those things reinforced my feelings about that rejection, that not being good enough, that needing to win and prove something to people or to win affection. So once I was able to let that go in the hypnosis, I just felt like I was a brand new person, and my health started to recover. And it's always a work in progress. It's never like you're going to be 100% and whatever, but it's just that
even if you had the best kidhood of all time, there's always going to be something, right? So
yeah, so over time you just recognize them faster, and you're like, hey, this is triggering an old feeling. This is not nice, but that's, rather than it bringing me to tears in that moment, it's just like a flag that, hey, maybe this is not a good space for me.
Rosie, I like to ask some really tough questions.
Sure.
And I like to get to the meat of the matter. If your mom was sitting here before you right now on this Zoom phone call, and if I wasn't here, what would you say to
her? Ooh, damn.
That is a damn question. There's no doubt about it.
Well, I don't think I would. Well. If I was in the same room, I would give her a hug. If I couldn't do that, then I would just tell her that I'm sorry that she's suffering so much. And yeah, I would just probably just say that I'm sorry.
Would you forgive her?
I feel like I have already, but
would you tell her?
Yeah, I would.
Would you say, Mom, I forgive you for everything. I understand. Would you say something along those lines?
Yeah,
what would Rosie's words be?
Mom, I'm sorry you're suffering, and I forgive you. I think I'd be ready to say that.
You ready to say that?
I think so.
Yeah. When was the last time you saw your mom?
4 years ago.
4 years ago. She lives still in Montreal? All right.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna drop that on the table. And I like to ask tough questions. And I think that part of my role, being a podcast host, is to help out, to motivate, educate, and inspire guests, myself, as well as individuals. And the reason why I asked that question is because, listen, there's going to be somebody that's going to be listening to this, Rosie. There's somebody listening to this, right? It could be 5 years from now. They're going to say, geez, I understand exactly what old Dr. Dan and Rosie are exactly saying. And I need to get help, and I need to forgive my mom, my dad, or whatever that is for them, and that's the reason why I do that. So listen, I can go on for hours. We have another 12 minutes and we're at that hour point. So I'm pushing the envelope here a little bit because I'm going to ask you to do something in a little bit. Hopefully you'll say yes. I don't know if you will, but if you don't, that's okay.
Okay.
So listen, we spoke a lot about Italians. So it's rough sometimes. They don't like to talk to therapists. They don't like to expose their feelings. They sweep things underneath the rug. I mean, it's across the board. I don't care if you're in North America, you're in Europe, or whatever the case may be. They're just a tough culture at times, especially if they come here, because they become very stoic, if you will. They become very stoic. And I was listening to Jimmy Valvano. If you know who Jimmy Valvano is, he was the coach from North Carolina State basketball coach. He won a national championship. He passed away from cancer, and he was talking about being an Italian American. Hug, kiss, think, thought. Bring your emotions to tears, because a lot of Italians do that too. They are expressive in their ways, and you and I. I shared with you before we came on air, because maybe you can interview me the next time on my podcast. I grew up in a very stoic Italian, in a very stoic Italian household. But listen, give me a couple of few cultures that really bring some happiness and some, laughter and tears of joy to your eyes, growing up in an Italian Canadian. I promised myself I wouldn't say Italian American.
Well, I think that the things that people remember Italians for are the very things that bring me a lot of joy. Like I'm proud of having a big family, like even if we don't necessarily get along or that we don't really like each other as people, but I think that even though we're still in the same room, we still know that like we're a thing, and to be in the presence of all these personalities at the same time, family dinners or Christmas dinners or whatever. So that's something I take pride in, like we're known for that. And of course how grandmas bake and cook, and they're just things that you'll never find in a grocery store or in a bakery shop. They're
that homemade stuff is just dynamite, man.
Really
I'm having a Pavlovian reaction right now. I'm salivating just when you're talking about this, to be honest with you.
It's really like those are the kind of things you wake up to that, or someone even gifts it to you, like a paisan says, here, I just made some cookies, and I can't describe the warmth that you have when you eat that.
Yeah. Let me tell you something. There's nothing better than a little espresso, throw a little anisette in there, and you got some biscotti cookies, man. I mean, or some Schwierdels or some forget about it, right? That's like heaven on earth for us, right?
Yeah.
That's like, and you got your family around you. Boy, you can just sit there and do that all day long. And it's just incredible. Where does the singing come in? And how did that help you out? Because, it said, when I was reading your bio, you're giving a voice to abuse survivors, right? Which is important, right? So where does the singing come in? What has that done for you? Because you can't sing in an Italian household.
Right.
Come on, when you had that video, you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, you're a banker, you're a woman, you're going to go home and make babies. That's what your job is. Nona is just going crazy, right? I mean, you're a singer. Forget about being a singer in an Italian household. You can't do that.
Yeah, no, you can't do that. So I was lucky that
drug, sex, and rock and roll, man.
Oh God. My mom was really supportive actually. She was the first one that I guess like picked up on my interest and talent, and she put me in music lessons and kind of like convinced my dad along the way, hey, like this kid's like interested in this, like let's, give her a shot. So my dad's brother was a musician or is still a musician. He owns a music school here in Montreal. And I started taking lessons there around like, I don't know, 7 years old. And it was piano first, and then I started taking singing lessons when I was around 9, 10. And when I started that, it just felt easy to me. Like this is piano was hard. Like I would, have to practice, and my fingers were stubborn and whatever. But the singing stuff, as hard as it felt natural. And I was like, okay, well, this is what I love to do. So obviously, like I mentioned before about my competitive nature, my parents got me to do the Royal Conservatory of Music program, which gave me like school credits. So it was an opportunity to be competitive and like have to get a good grade. However, it was in classical. And I think that that was my way of feeling like I could still win attention from my parents. Because if I did well, then, good job, kid. But also it was something that was mine and that I could be proud of, and that I could, if I could sing, then I could sing my feelings.
Right.
Like every kind of artist or musician might say the same thing about that. And so over time, I just, kept going to lessons. I went to school for music, and my interest was always music because it was like my dreamland. I could invent things, I could write things, I could express what I wanted. And I guess like at some point, if I'm going to be fully honest, like there was this unhealthy relationship with music too, where I felt like if I'm not getting the validation from my mom, then I'm going to get validation from strangers.
Right.
And it was so toxic when I like really had that aha moment that was what I was doing. And I think that aha moment is what transformed the focus of, let's say, my career, where writing music and making music wasn't about just like, being a pop star or like having a hit. It was about, what am I giving people? What is like, if people are going to spend 3.5 minutes listening to one of my songs, that's 3.5 minutes of their day. Like, why do I deserve their time? And so I started to write stuff about personal topics, about things that I felt people were suffering with or that experience, and again weren't really in a position to
You
talk
were
about
being
it.
expressive from your experience, right?
Yeah, and I wanted to just give them a little like ray of sunshine, that they're they're heard, like even if I don't know their
Right.
story, but they're understood. And I'm basically kind of making music that I wish I was listening to when I was living at home and going through those things.
Right.
and and that's it really. So that's where I feel like that's the focus of my work now, is making relatable, maybe sad but melancholic, and yeah, melancholic, reflective, and empowering music, so they can feel like they can overcome their obstacles too. And that I combine that with like basically the vocal coaching and the naturopath stuff that I do, just so that it's a very holistic approach to, I want you to feel heard from my music, but then if you in their coaching, I want to help you express yourself so that you're not this kind of bottle of
Right.
feelings.
Right. You want them to feel and express from what you're from the product, the singing,
Yeah.
and so forth. New Music Weekly's top 40 artist of the year for Raise Your Voice. That was in June 2020. Hollywood Music and Media Award 2021 for your song Apple Tree. So, boy, I'm proud to call you my new Italian friend. And we literally have like 4 minutes left, and I'm not done. I feel incomplete with this conversation, in as much as I think there's more to talk about. And we discussed, I think we're going to have you back on. But
Yeah.
in the last few minutes, can you this is a big ask. I always
Depends what
ask,
you're gonna ask me. Just remember that I'm really congested. So if it has anything to do with singing, it's probably not gonna be a
oh,
good.
come on, bro. Just belt out a little something here.
Oh my
Listen, you
God.
know what? I got this idea last night because one of my favorite singers is Dean Martin, and That's
Okay.
Amore is my jam, right? How
That's
can it
not
not be?
That's because of the video last night, isn't it?
I said I'm asking
Oh my God.
December to
Oh
belt
my
out a few lines here. I don't, listen, it's okay. I'm sure it's going to come out incredible.
Oh my
I'm
God.
sure it's going to be beautiful, because I'm listening to your voice And I'm saying to myself, holy, and you use the word too, struns. I was like hilarious. I'm like, this is great, man. Are you kidding me? I'm like, holy struns here. I mean, this is just incredible. I'm like, this girl could belt it out. I'm saying, oh my. So, can you give us the honor and the pleasure of belting a couple of lyrics out?
Okay.
I could be very convincing, as you can see.
Oh God.
That's one of the quintessential traits for an Italian American in North Jersey.
Okay.
You could do Angels We Heard on High in Latin if you want. I mean, listen, a little Bocelli never hurt anybody that way, right?
Oh gosh. When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amore. When you dance down the street with a cloud at your feet, you're in love. Where you walk in a dream, but you know you're not dreaming, signore. Scusami, but you say begging on Napoli, that's amore. That's amore. That's amore. Dun, 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 dun.
Thank you very much. That was for me. I don't know about anybody else listening in. I think you have a beautiful voice. So thank you very much
Thanks,
for doing that and so forth and so on. I was going to start singing with you, but then I said forget about it because it's just going to ruin the moment at that point because you're going to go, what's this off-key nonsense coming from the other side? Coming from across the border here. So listen, for all of my listeners, I want you to share this conversation with everybody who's struggling and who's not struggling, because if you're not struggling, you may be struggling anyway and you don't know, because this is an important conversation. And in order to talk about your struns, you really need to, do some work. And Ro has done this, and this is just an incredible conversation. We're gonna have her back on. And listen, you're getting some free songs at the end here. Doesn't get any better than that. Where can people purchase your songs? Where can people find you, and so forth? I want my listen. Christmas is coming up. These are great gifts that you can give. So where can we find you, Rosie?
So the main hub, I guess, is my website, decemberrosemusic.com. And from there, I mean, it takes you to Apple Music and so on and so forth. There's merch available also on December Rose Music. And so I guess you can follow along for now. I have a new release project coming out for next year, which is basically talking about the outlook after this, after my whole story, what life is like after you've recovered from trauma and how you make up for lost time. And
when is that coming out?
We're scheduling our first single off the record in February. Can't say the date yet.
Guess what we're doing in January? before it comes out.
Okay, fair enough. So December Rose Music on all platforms, and just follow along, and I'll be posting all the updates so that y'all can figure it out, take a listen, get a copy, and that fun stuff.
Rosie, thank you very much for being on today. Thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for sharing your story.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
My new favorite Italian person, and this is great. So please go to the website. It will be in the show notes, and get in there and get some of those records, because as you can see, the girl can belt them out. All right, she can belt them out. So please get in there and please share this. Rosie, thank you very much.
Thank you
for coming on. And we're going to do this again in January, just before the release. I think that'll be a lot of fun, and we'll discuss more about that. But I want to thank everybody for listening in. Boy, I think I'm at the hour right now, so they're gonna cut me. So thank you very much for coming on. Thank you for being here. Look for Rosie next month. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.